Welcome to my channel, Katie Alchemy. Today I'll be talking about the 5 most common mistakes made by photographers. Do your pictures come out overexposed? Is your new camera like learning rocket science? Is photography an entirely different language to you? Does photography scare the living out of you? We don't cuss on my channel. Let me help you avoid the top 5 amateur photographer mistakes that I made. The number 1 most common mistake made has to do with exposure and overexposing a photograph. Really hard to get that detail back, and honestly, those are just throwaway shots. Sad but true. How to avoid overexposure? Well, let me tell you. There's a little something called aperture / f-stop. It's known as both, it's the same thing. There is shutter speed. If you don't know what that is, I will explain it. And there is ISO setting. If I had to explain the aperture, it would definitely be like a pupil. How a pupil in an eye opens to let in more light and closes, well, not closes, but gets smaller to let in less light. So when we're outside, it's bright and sunny, our pupils are going to be smaller, and then when we're inside and it's darker, they're going to be a little bit larger to let in more light. You can keep your aperture as low as possible, as low as your lens will let it go. That is probably the best option because you're letting in more detail. And keep your shutter speed as high as possible because it avoids blurring. The numbers on the dials, when you turn your shutter speed down, you're letting in more light, so the lower the number, the greater the light. Same thing with aperture, the lower the number, the greater the light. The higher the number, the less light you're letting in. ISO, it's the complete and utter opposite. Thank you, camera gods, for making everything 10 times more complicated than it needs to be. If I had to explain what a shutter is, it's like blinking.
Literally. When you hear that shutter go off, that's a blink.
It's still letting in light. It just lets you know how long the blink is. So if I'm like this, and my eyes are getting watery, there's more of a chance that things are gonna blur until I blink. It gauges the light that's being allowed to come into the camera to expose the photo. ISO, it's the higher the number, the more light. What you want is to take your ISO as far down as you can possibly get it because you don't want to have noise in your photo. And noise is an entirely different subject that I could talk about for literally hours. I hope all of that kind of makes sense to you guys. That's just a little bit of how to avoid making the mistake of overexposing a photo. The second most common mistake is composition. I cannot reiterate this point more. It is an issue when someone takes a picture and they have an object behind their head and the object looks like it's growing out of their head, like a tree, for example. Why would you want a tree to grow out of your head? In that same vein, do not cut people's limbs off, okay? It's not very nice. And you cut someone's hands or feet off in the picture, it looks real weird, okay? Don't do it. If you don't know what white balance is, you want to learn now. So white balance is going to help you a ton. Usually your color depends on the type of camera you use, but you can adjust it and you can make corrections. So I'm going to show you that right now. This is the normal white balance that is used when you have all settings on auto. This is not what I prefer. If you want to use it, you can. I don't really like what that does for skin when you're shooting with people and portraits, so that's one option. If you want to look like you have jaundice, this is the daylight setting in white balance. Next. If you want to look like you have the heat of 1,000 suns burning beneath your skin, please use the shade setting. Actually, never use the shade setting. This is the cloudy setting. It's very much like the shady setting. I don't like it. Again, I don't recommend it. The tungsten setting is usually better than the fluorescent setting. This is the one we have on right now. It's very, very blue, so don't use this, please. This is the fluorescent setting. It's quite a bit less blue in tone. Again, we're moving on. This is the flash setting, guys. Don't use this one. This is the custom setting. A lot of people use the custom setting because they can adjust what color tone they want to be. I would not use this, but I'm just for this purpose going to show you guys how extreme it can get and how much control you have over the actual white balance in this setting. And we're back to normal. This is the Kelvin setting. I like to call him Kevin because he's my friend and I always use this setting. You also have a lot of control over the white balance and the color tone with this one. It's literally the one I use almost every time for natural lighting and for studio lighting. Here's your trick. when you are adjusting your white balance, use a white sheet of paper and adjust from there. Number 5, one of the most common mistakes are people not using their camera tools properly. You know that little top screen, if you have one that shows all of the settings, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, and more, actually, everything. Use it to your advantage so you know what you're on as far as settings goes, how bright everything is, and you're not shooting completely blind. And there's actually a light on that top screen in case it's dark. You're in a dark room and it lights up everything so you can see what's going on. In the viewfinder, it also has a list of the settings that you have on as far as light and exposure, and it has a light meter. Please don't forget that when you're to the far right, you are overexposed, and when you're to the far left, you are underexposed. You want to hit the middle or just be a little bit overexposed. Don't forget to use your light meter. It tells you where you are, even if you're not using your preview settings, which leads me to preview settings. If you have a pop-out screen, if you're using a film camera, you won't have this necessarily, but I have a screen, it pops out. Regardless of whether or not it pops out, it still previews the image, even if it's built into your camera. You need to look at that. Do not shoot blindly. Many mistakes ago, many years ago, I used to shoot blindly and then upload pictures and have no idea what they looked like until they were on the computer and the shoot was over and I had no control. Key is to make sure you know what you're doing, what your images are looking like, if your models pose correctly, if your composition is good, if your exposure is not too bad, not too bright, not too dark. Make sure you're previewing your images, even if it only takes like a couple extra seconds. Shooting blind is not worth all of the tears that you're going to have when you realize you didn't get the images that you wanted. That is my 5 top mistakes that photographers make when they first come out of the gates and they start photography. If you have any questions or concerns, leave comments down below in the comment box. I will leave in the description all of the tools and accessories that I've used in this video. They'll have direct links to Amazon so you can purchase them for yourself if you're interested. All of my social media is in the description box below if you need to contact me outside of YouTube. And as always, guys, do you.